Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the process where we're going to be getting buckets for the December 12th, 2016 NBA slate. My name is Stephen Porter. You can find me on Twitter at Stephen Porter Jr. We've got a pretty interesting 7 game slate tonight. Not too big, not too small. Every team and every game is in play for some fantasy goodness. We're going to start with the highest total on the night, which is 10 points ahead of the field. This is a pretty big one. We've got the Brooklyn Nets on the road to face the Houston Rockets. Rockets are 14-point favorites, and the total is 229 here. Definitely going to be a lot of points in this game. Brooklyn is terrible defensively, and they play at a breakneck pace, about 4 possessions per 48 minutes higher than Houston. So this is actually going to be a pace-up game for Houston. People kind of still think Houston as one of the faster paced teams in the NBA, but they really haven't been this year. They're pretty much kind of middle of the pack, but Brooklyn is in the top 2 with Phoenix in terms of pace. And like I mentioned, they play some of the worst defense in the league, 109.6 defensive rating. They're horrible on the glass, only 47.7% rebound rate. This game certainly does set up as a bit of a blowout. Houston is, like I touched on the last time, I think they're one of the better teams in the league right now. Obviously, you know that Harden is incredibly efficient offensively, and they're really strong on the glass and playing maybe not lockdown defense, but certainly respectable defense, especially since Patrick Beverley has come back into the lineup. So I am definitely hesitant to target the Houston guys just because of a blowout factor, but I do think there's a couple things working in Brooklyn's favor. The biggest thing being that Jeremy Lin is going to come back tonight and play some minutes off the bench. Lin was a pretty solid player for Brooklyn early in the season. He was posting a positive net rating. They were very strong on offense when he was on the court. Better than they've been on defense with him playing. So I'm hoping that his return can kind of keep Brooklyn in this game, because this is a spot where I really, really want to pay up for James Harden. I haven't been paying for Harden for a while now just because he's kind of been too expensive with respect to all of the other guys on the slate, but I think this is the spot where he might just absolutely blow the top off of his ceiling, and he's only 11.4K on Draftkings. That's actually pretty attractive for him. I mean, he was up in the 12s for a while, so I'm pretty interested in Harden here. I think he's giving you, even if there's a blowout, I think he's giving you at least 50 and probably closer to 60 points in this game. And if Brooklyn can keep it close and make Harden play up to like 40 minutes, I think we can give you like 75-ish, maybe even up to like 80 DraftKings points as a ceiling if everything really goes his way. So I'm kind of afraid to fade that ceiling in this matchup. There's a lot of other really good guards in place. I mean, I can understand not playing him in cash games, but I do think there's enough value to fit him in here today. I like a lot of guys in the kind of under 5K range that I don't mind pairing up with Harden in cash games, so that I can still have a relatively balanced roster. I think we could possibly see Harden. I've kind of touched on where his usage has been really low in games that they kind of dominate. They did it to Dallas in the last game. They were ahead pretty handily most of the game, and he only posted a 24% usage rate, whereas he's been more like 32 to 35 in most games. If Brooklyn stays close, he's going to post some really, really nice efficiency. I kind of respect Isaiah Whitehead as a defender, but that's not going to take me away from playing Harden. The only downside I have to playing Harden is the blowout factor, and he's at least going to give you a solid floor if they would blow him out. But I think Harden could kind of come out and just dominate this game from the get-go. We kind of saw him do that against Philly earlier in the year, where he came out and he had like 30 DraftKings points in the first quarter, and Philly wasn't able to compete in that game. But I mean, let's say that he does the same kind of thing, and then Jeremy Lin comes in with the second unit and has them playing respectable basketball, and the game is within 10 to 15 points for most of the game. I think we could see like 36 to 38, maybe up to 40 minutes for Harden, and just a monster offensive explosion. We know he's always in play for a triple double. I mentioned how bad Brooklyn is on the boards. He should see at least like 6 rebounds. And I think 10 is very much in play. I think you can project him 10 plus assists basically anytime he takes a court. And in a matchup like this where he's going to be paced up a little bit against a horrible defense, I think it's a really, really strong bet. He goes up to like 12 plus assists. And I think he's a strong bet for 30 plus points. So I think he's going to score at least like 60 DraftKings points here today, and I'll be happy with 60 as long as the value guys come through. And like I said, I don't want to miss out on a 75, 80 fantasy point game if it happens here. So I'm probably going to be playing him in my cash games, at least on DraftKings right now. I have him. It worked out a little easier to go a little more balanced and get to some of the other guys we're going to talk about here on FanDuel at the moment, but I mean, I could still try to jam him in there just because, like I said, I think he's a great, great play. So Harden for sure, cash or tournament target. Eric Gordon's going to be the second guy to look at for Houston, 29.4% usage rate in the last game. That'll probably trend down a little bit if Harden has to do more, but if it would be a blowout, I think Gordon is a really nice pivot off of James Harden. Only 5.4 on DraftKings. I think he's a legitimate cash or tournament play. Clint Capella is pretty interesting. Mentioned how soft Brooklyn is at the rim. Brook Lopez is not going to rebound at all, so Capella, if he's going to see 30 plus minutes, should easily get to a double-double in this matchup, maybe a couple of defensive statistics. I think he's a legitimate cash or tournament play as well. Always worried about his minutes, though, with Nene and Montrezl Harrell lurking, especially if they're going to blow him out. But I think he's definitely got like a 25-ish, 27-point floor. I don't really target Ryan Anderson, even in a great matchup. I actually don't even think that this is a great matchup for him. Trevor Booker kind of plays a style of basketball that I don't think Ryan Anderson matches up well with. I mean, they could maybe try to get him the ball in the post where he could take his size advantage and work with it. But I mean, I don't really see Houston running offense through Ryan Anderson in the post here, where Harden's going to have such an easy path to success. So I'm not really interested in Ryan Anderson. Ariza is just always kind of in play. I don't really think he's a cash play, but he's got a ceiling for tournaments. And Patrick Beverley, I am definitely interested coming up. He produces every single game. I mean, he's got locked for like 30-ish minutes and probably going to score a DraftKings point per minute in this matchup. I think he's a very, very legitimate tournament cash play and a good tournament play as a pivot off of Harden if you don't want to use Harden. So I think it's pretty much Harden from this game. Gordon or Beverley would be my secondary guys that I could use in cash or tournaments. I think Capella's interesting, and I'm kind of off the other guys. I always want to mention Sam Decker as a guy that you could play, but there's other cheap forwards that I'd rather play. Bringing it back on the other side with Brooklyn, we've got Brook Lopez. Most of the nights leading the way. Last game he was a 32.7% usage rate. He's been pretty much anywhere from about 22 to 35, mostly in the range of like 25 to 30. For the year, I think he could probably see up around 30% usage. I'm going to go elsewhere today, but I think he's an interesting tournament stack with maybe Harden. Bojan Bogdanovic is kind of interesting. He's been kind of matchup proof, and he is super cheap at 4.3K on DraftKings. He's shooting guard and small forward eligible. I mean, he's been paying off that price tag pretty much. Last 4 games straight, he would have gotten you there. Like I said, don't love the matchup targeting Houston, but I mean, he's kind of been playing in blowouts anyway. He played 27 minutes against the Spurs when they lost by 30 in the last game and still put up 29 fantasy points. Don't know he's the strongest cash play, but I mean, I wouldn't try to talk you off him if you really liked him, and I think he's an interesting tournament play as a guy that could get you 30 plus fantasy points in this matchup. Good option for a game stack if you want to include like a Harden and Lopez and Bogdanovic, and then kind of build out from there. Trevor Booker is at least mildly interesting. I'm probably going to go elsewhere at power forward tonight. Don't love the matchup, but he could be in line for like 12 plus rebounds here. Because like I said, nobody on Brooklyn really rebounds, so I mean, Booker kind of has to do it by default. Not a cash play for me, but somebody I think you look at in tournaments. I'm not really interested in Kilpatrick. I'm not interested in Rondé Hollis Jefferson. I'm not interested in Jeremy Lin coming back. He's probably going to have his minutes limited. So it's pretty much Harden is the main guy I want to target. Like I said, I'm really, really, really into this spot for Harden. I think he's a really nice floor ceiling combo. Only drawbacks are blowout and maybe a little bit of opportunity cost because there's other guys that are really in good spots at the point guard matchup, at the point guard position. But I love the matchup for him, so definitely a guy I want to jam in if at all possible. Second game on the slate is going to be the Portland Trailblazers visiting the Los Angeles Clippers. Clippers are 10-point favorites. Totals 219. Blake Griffin is expected to play in this game. The last time these teams matched up, the Clippers embarrassed the Blazers. It was ugly. Blazers could not get anything going on offense. These teams have kind of trended in a little bit of different directions from then. Clippers aren't the kind of defensive juggernaut that they were at that time. Austin Rivers is going to be out in this game. I think there might be a couple extra shots open for Jamal Crawford here. I think Jamal Crawford is especially interesting on FanDuel, where he's only 4.1K. I feel really good about him getting at least 20 fantasy points, with maybe ceiling to like 30 in this matchup if he's going to play like 25 to 30 minutes. Austin Rivers was playing a bunch off the bench. He was playing anywhere from the 1 to the 3, so there's going to be there are some minutes to go around for the second unit here for the Clippers. I think Crawford is a pretty strong play. He's a little more expensive on DraftKings. I don't have him in there on DraftKings right now, but I mean, if you really, really wanted to go there, I could see doing it. Like I said, there's just, I think, stronger plays a little cheaper than him that I'll probably go to, but FanDuel makes a lot of sense. The guy I really want to target in this game, though, is going to be Blake Griffin. We have seen Portland be one of the most fantasy-friendly matchups. They're giving up 109.5 points per 100 possessions. They're playing at a pretty good pace, up around 100 to 101. Possessions per 48 minutes. That's going to be a little bit of a pace up game for the Clippers. Blake Griffin has already dominated this matchup twice. He's given you like what is that, like almost close to 2 DraftKings points per minute in his matchup with Portland. We've been seeing Portland just get absolutely ripped by 4s pretty much every time out. Paul George and Thaddeus Young got him last time. I think Blake is almost, he's a lock for 40 points. I think it's a reasonable projection for him to have 50 points in this game, even in a blowout. And I think the Portland Trailblazers are actually going to keep this game a lot closer because they're playing much better recently, and the Clippers are kind of backsliding a little bit. So I love Blake Griffin in this matchup. I want to get him in cash. Don't have him in DraftKings right now because I can't fit him, but I really want to get him in there. I'd probably have to drop Harden out if I did go to him, but do have him on FanDuel where it's a little easier to fit him. And I think he's an awesome tournament target because I've touched on the ceiling, and he didn't play in the last game, and he has a questionable tag next to his name. It's a late tip, and he is reportedly going to play. I mean, I 100% think he's going to play, but he probably won't be confirmed in the starting lineup until after lock. So you could definitely get him at a really low ownership in tournaments here. A really, really strong tournament target, a guy I'm targeting heavily on my tournament rosters just because of that ownership ceiling combo, and a guy that I really, really think is a strong cash game play as well. Not as interested in Chris Paul, but I think he's a strong play. Like I said, at point guard, I'm probably just going to try to get up to Harden if I'm gonna pay that much at the point guard spot, and I think the usage will trend a little bit towards Blake Griffin in this matchup. So I'm not really interested in anybody on the Clippers outside of Griffin, and maybe Jamal Crawford as a punt for a guy that's going to see a ton of shots with the second unit. Mo Spade's not really too interesting with Blake Griffin back, and Wes Johnson is somebody that I wrote down as somebody that could maybe see a little bit more time off the bench, but I'm not going to go there. I think there's better plays. So it's pretty much Blake Griffin, really, really strong cash or tournament play. And then Jamal Crawford, who I think is a better play on FanDuel than he is DraftKings. But I definitely think he's a cash and/or tournament play over there. I'm going elsewhere on DraftKings, but if you really liked him, I could definitely see playing it. I'm bringing it back on the other end. We know where the shots are going to come. On Portland's side of the ball, it's Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. They both posted usage rates over 30 in the last game. I don't think they're cash plays just because of the matchup with the Clippers, and the Clippers kind of are going to defend the point very well, so whichever one has the ball in their hands, it's going to be tough for them to really get it going. But I always think they're tournament targets, and one of them probably makes for a good stack with Blake Griffin. I don't know that I'd play them both, but like we saw in the last game, I mean, they can both get off in the same game, but I just don't think it's as strong of a matchup for them. I don't think Aminu is going to play in this game. I don't think he's actually been ruled out, but he didn't play in the last game, and if he would, he's going to be limited, so I'm not really too interested in him at all. Even if he plays, that's not going to take me off of Blake Griffin at all. I don't think there's any cash plays on Portland's side of the ball, but I think you can get away with playing Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum in cash games. So Blake Griffin definitely the strongest target, and then Jamal Crawford, especially on FanDuel, will be the second strongest target for me in this game. Moving on to the next highest total on the board. It's going to be the Los Angeles Lakers traveling to visit the Sacramento Kings. Kings are 8.5-point favorites here. Total's 216.5. This is a really, really juicy game. Every time that Sacramento plays, I want a piece of Boogie Cousins. We saw what Kristaps Porzingis did to the night, put up a gargantuan stat line. I'm expecting the same thing from Boogie Cousins here tonight. 35 usage rate anytime he takes fairly often. If he's going to have a 40%, a little bit more, a little bit healthier. So I think project to stay in this game, even though it's an 8.5-point spread. I mean, Boogie Cousins, I don't have him in DraftKings cash right now, but again, like it's scaring me to not have him here. There's always a floor with him because he can get thrown out of the game pretty much any time. But he's been kind of toeing the line here recently. I mean, that's not like a super large concern for me, but it's just always in his range of outcomes because he's Boogie. But I mean, he could give you like 38 points, like 20 rebounds, 6 assists, a bunch of defensive statistics. I mean, he could just absolutely dominate this game and play a ton of minutes because the Lakers keep it close. He's only 10.9K. I mean, he's just a really, really strong floor ceiling play here. I mean, I'm talking to myself into not being able to fade him at all, but I don't know. It's tough. There's a bunch of other guys that we'll get to that are really strong plays. So Boogie, definitely a guy that you at least need to have tournament ownership on, and a guy I can really, really see playing in cash games with all the value out there. Rudy Gay is a sec. Don't like the fact that the guard rotation's getting a little more crowded with D'Angelo Russell coming back, but Lou still put up a 36.4% usage rate in the last game. I mean, he is just chucking with reckless abandon right now. It's a great matchup against Sacramento. They're not good defensively, 105.8% defensive rating. He's a little bit too much for me to pay on DraftKings, though, with a little bit of added uncertainty with all the extra guards in the rotation. I'm not gonna play him on DraftKings. He's just too expensive. I think there's better shooting guard point per dollar plays from a floor perspective, but I do have him on FanDuel right now because he's only 6.3K over there, and he just keeps doing it. I think he could definitely find a lot of efficiency, still see plenty of volume, and still play 30-ish, 28 to 30 minutes, and get you like 35 to 40 FanDuel points, and that's really going to get it done over there. Again, not the strongest play on DraftKings because of the price point, but really strong play on FanDuel. And I think he's an awesome stack with DeMarcus Cousins. Next guy I'd be looking at from the Lakers side of the ball is going to be Julius Randle. Played really well in the matchup between these two teams in the last meeting. Gave you like 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. I think he could be over 1, trending up maybe again close to that 1.3 DraftKings points per minute again in this matchup. It's a pretty good matchup for him. Sacramento's not great on the boards outside of DeMarcus Cousins. He could spend a lot of time matched up with like Rudy Gay, maybe Matt Barnes. I don't know who they're going to play at the 4, but I think Boogie probably going to slide down to the 5 and have somebody else on the floor, play a little smaller lineup with Randle at the 4, matching up with one of these smaller guys. So I think he could take advantage of them boards. Don't have him in cash games right now, but he's giving you a really solid like 30 plus DraftKings floor. I think he's a reasonable play. Another guy that I wouldn't mind working into a game stack. If you wanted to play him in cash, I could do it, but I don't have him right now. I'm not too interested in anybody else from the Lakers side of the ball. Just too much uncertainty with the minutes and shot attempts. There's a guy that I wrote down, but I'm not going to play him. I think there's better small forward punts on the slate. Going to move on to the next game where we have the Milwaukee Bucks, 7.5-point road underdogs at the Toronto Raptors. Totals 213. Raptors are playing really good basketball right now, but so are the Bucks. I I think this game could stay competitive towards the end and have both sets of starters playing pretty heavy minutes. Really like Giannis Antetokounmpo in this matchup. I mean, I like him in any matchup, but I don't really think that Toronto has any way to slow him down. I mean, he's like literally a foot taller than Kyle Lowry. I don't think DeMar DeRozan slows him down at all. I don't think DeMar Carroll slows him down at all. Toronto's pretty soft at the rim. They have a 50% rebounding rate, but I mean, I'm not worried about like Jonas Valanciunas, Siakam, Patrick, whoever's going to be on the floor for them. I don't think that they match up well with trying to stop Giannis from just absolutely detonating the rim. So I like him a lot in this spot. Definitely a pivot off of Harden if you don't want to pay up to Harden. Because I think he's giving you like a similar floor ceiling combo here. I don't think he has quite the ceiling, but obviously he's a smaller investment, so you're not taking on as much of a risk. And I don't think that he has any kind of deterrence. No matchup deterrence. Don't think he's going to get blown out. Don't think they're going to blow Toronto out. I think there could be a bunch of points scored in this game. Toronto has been susceptible to good teams defensively, and they're actually the most efficient team offensively in the league right now. So I think this could kind of be like 115 to 110 kind of game. And I definitely want a piece of Giannis. I think he's a strong cash and or tournament play. Like I said, I would probably get up to Giannis or Harden from Chris Paul in this matchup, and I think Giannis is a legitimate pivot from Harden in your cash games if you don't want to pay for him. Pay for Harden, that is. Kyle Lowry is also another really strong point guard play here. He's playing with supreme efficiency right now. He's just kind of locked in on the offensive end. Volume has trended up a little bit. His usage has been closer to 30 in most of the recent games. He was 30.9 in the last game. DeMar Carroll coming back and playing this game might take a couple shots away from him, but I mean his efficiency is enough that with his 8.1 price point, and like I said, I think he should probably play like 36 to 40 minutes in this game. I think he can give you at least 40, probably 45, maybe a ceiling of up to like 55 or 60 if the volume would swing a little bit his way from DeMar DeRozan. So I think he's going to be like a 45 to 60 point range here. He's only 8.1K on DraftKings. I think he's a really strong play in this matchup. Not worried about anybody on the Milwaukee side of the ball individually. They've been playing really good defense, but I think it's I'm willing to bet on Toronto's offense more than I am on Milwaukee's defense at this point. So I really like Lowry as a cash or tournament play. Nice stack with Giannis in tournaments. DeMar DeRozan's usage shot back up to where we saw earlier in the season in that 37 to 38 range. He was 37.6 in the last game. I think that could trend down a little bit here in this matchup. I mean, I don't think he's a bad play, but I'm just not going to do it. I think he's a reasonable stack as well with Giannis in this spot, but his price is really coming down. He's only 7.7K on DraftKings. I don't think it's the best spot for him because I mean they could put Giannis on him. There's definitely some length, and anybody that has the lateral agility and length to stay with DeRozan has been able to slow him down a little bit in the past. So I'll just bet on the under on DeMar DeRozan today, and then I looked ahead and he's playing Philadelphia in the next matchup. So I'm hoping that he goes a little bit underowned, underperforms here, and then goes down to like 7.5K, and then we can really go all in on him against Philadelphia in the next spot. So Lowry, I think, is the strongest play from Toronto. I'm not really interested in any of their secondary guys. I think Patrick Patterson is kind of interesting. He's only 4K. Could see himself matched up with like Greg Monroe a little bit here. I definitely think he could give you like a 25 to 30 point game in this matchup. I don't have him in cash. I think he's a tournament target. If you really wanted to play him in cash, I could see it, I guess, to save some salary. But I think he's more of a candidate for like a game stack with like a Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and then bringing it back with Giannis on the other side. So definitely Lowry the strongest play. If you want to play DeRozan, you could do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to play DeMar Carroll. I'm not playing Corey Joseph. Corey Joseph is kind of sneaky because the Milwaukee second unit has been much worse on defense than the first unit has been, but I'm just not going to go there. But I think he bears mentioning. On the Milwaukee side, definitely going to be Giannis. I think Malcolm Brogdon is at least interesting. He's playing with really good efficiency right now. He's only 3.4K, point guard and shooting guard eligible. Don't mind his matchup. Again, he's like half a foot taller than Corey Joseph. So I definitely think he could get over a little bit. His minutes are kind of up and down, but I do think he's a good hedge off of Giannis in a tournament just in case Giannis would get into foul trouble or something like that. I think Brogdon's minutes would tick up a little bit. Jabari Parker, I really liked him in the last game, and he got totally undercut by Mirza Teletovic coming out and just absolutely blowing it up from three-point range. Can't trust the minutes. It's not going to be a cash game play for me, but I mean I don't mind the individual matchup, and it's probably a good bounce back spot for him where people won't play him after that 12. Like maybe if Giannis doesn't play well, you could play Brogdon and Jabari, and then bring it back with on the other side of the ball, and have yourself at a low-owned kind of side stack and be juicy. I think it's going to stay close. There's probably going to be a lot of points, so I think this is definitely a very targetable game. Giannis and Lowry definitely plays from this game to punt. I think he's a play. I'm going to go elsewhere. A guy we'll get to here. Maybe in the next game, the next highest total we have Hornets at the Indiana Pacers. Hornets are 1.5 point favorites on the road. Total's 209 here. Definitely like some Hornets guys. Pacers are a target here. They're playing pretty fast, over 100 possessions per 48 minutes, giving up 105.6 defensive rating on the year. So there should be some plays on Charlotte's side of the ball. It's just going to be pegging which guys success here. And I'm not going to play Kemba Walker in cash. I'm a little hesitant because of the fact that he's had some injuries here recently and his efficiency has trended down a little bit. But I really think it's a good matchup for him. Like targeting point guards against Indiana. We saw Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum absolutely torch him in the last game. So I think he's a really strong I think Kemba's at the very least a really strong tournament play, and if you wanted to play him in cash, I could see it, but there's just a little too much uncertainty for me to take on that kind of risk with all the other good point guard plays on the slate, so I won't do it, but I definitely want a piece of him in tournament games. First matchup between these two teams on the season, Kemba put up 2 Draftkings points per minute and only played 25 minutes. If you could see that same kind of efficiency and have to play like 30 plus minutes, I mean, obviously you're looking at a tremendous ceiling. So he's a guy I really want to get into some tournament lineups, but I'm a little hesitant to play him in cash games. Like I said, I think there's a little bit of concern with him at the moment. If he would trend down in usage a little bit, I think the usage would make sense to go towards Nicholas Batum and Marvin Williams. I'm pretty interested in both of these guys in this matchup. I think Batum's very cheap. Only 6.6K on DraftKings. I think this game's going to be a little bit closer. I don't think Charlotte's going to go in here and blow Indiana out. Indiana's a little bit healthier now. They're playing a little bit better basketball, especially Paul George, who we'll touch on in a second. But I think this game's going to be close. Indiana's at home, so definitely a lot of things pointing towards Indiana at least being able to stay in this game. I definitely think Charlotte's going to win. I think Charlotte's a better basketball team. I don't think it's particularly close, but like I said, I think Indiana can play well enough in this game where Charlotte's going to be in it and have to play extended minutes for their starters. I think Batum's going to give you like a 30-point floor, maybe even up to like 35-point floor, and I think he's giving you like a 50-point ceiling and only 6.6K. Don't know how popular he'll be. Shooting guard and small forward eligible. I think he's a cash game play. I don't have him right now, but I mean I could totally see the play. And at the worst, I definitely think he's a very strong tournament play. Touched on Marvin Williams there for a second. I want to spend because if you look at his game log, I mean I don't think he's like the most attractive play, so I don't think he's going to be owned in this spot. But his minutes and usage trended up a little bit in the last game against Cleveland. He got himself up to 30 minutes, the most he's seen since he came back from an injury. So hopefully we can see him play another 30 minutes in this game, maybe a little bit more. I think this is a matchup where he projects to be definitely serviceable on the court against the 3s and 4s from Indiana. I think it makes a little more sense to have him out there than Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Kidd-Gilchrist's minutes are really trending down. I don't know if it's just a lack of offensive efficiency because he's not shooting well in the last couple of games, or if he's still having injury trouble because he was having some soft tissue, kind of posterior chain, like hamstring and back issues, and those things kind of tend to linger. I think that might be part of the reason he's not playing well. So I think Marvin could kind of take a few of his minutes. I think Marvin is a better play at the 4 in this matchup than, say, like Frank Kaminsky is, because I think Thad and or Paul George are going to spend most of their time at the 4, and I don't think Kaminsky matches up with either of those guys well at all. Marvin's a clearly a better play individually against those guys. So I think Marvin's minutes, I want to project him to see another 30 plus minutes in this game. I think it sets up well for him. He took a bunch of shots. His usage was up to an 18.6% rate. He took 13 shots in the last game against Cleveland. Obviously a better matchup here. So if he sees a little bit more efficiency, so let's say his usage trends up to like 18 to 20, he sees 30 plus minutes, and he sees some good efficiency against Indiana. We've touched on how bad Indiana is defensively. I think he's a really strong play, and he's super cheap at only 4.2K. At the very worst, I think he's giving you like a 35 to 40 point ceiling with nobody going to play him. So I think he's an awesome tournament play. I have him in my cash games right now because, like I said, I'm looking for value to jam in some of these studs, and I feel good about getting at least 20 points from Marvin Williams in this game, maybe like a 25 point floor. And if he's going to give you a 25 point floor, he's a guy that, I mean, just play him, man. It's a really good matchup. Things are going to go well for him. Indiana's terrible on the boards. He could definitely see maybe even up to like double-digit rebounds in this game. I just think everything is really trending in his direction, and it's tough. It's tough to make the play because he's coming off the injury, and the offensive success has not been there. But there's just so many things pointing towards him breaking out a little bit. I really want to use him in cash games. I have him on Draftkings right now. Don't have him on FanDuel because there's a couple other guys I really want to pay for, but I just think he's a strong play. So if you're not comfortable with him in cash games, I could certainly understand that, but I definitely think you want to play him in tournament games to get some low-owned upside to jam in some of these other really, really nice and attractive studs on this slate. I think him and Batum are a nice little tournament stack off of Kemba. And then, like I said, I think Kemba's a really strong play as well. I'm not too interested in anybody else from Charlotte's side of the ball. I could see playing like Cody Zeller or something like that, just because we like targeting Indiana at the rim, but I probably won't do it. But I certainly think he's in play. Bringing it back on the other side of the ball with Indiana, I'm not as aggressively targeting Indiana guys because Charlotte's been one of the better defenses on the year, 101.3 on the season, and they've been even a little better than that recently. But I think I like Indiana enough offensively, like I said, to at least stay in this game. So I think there might be at least one or two plays from Indiana's side of the ball. Paul George is definitely the guy that we're going to want to target here. He posted a 40% usage rate in the last game against the Portland Trail Blazers. Really liked him to kind of spike and hit a ceiling there. He definitely did. I don't know that he's going to give you the same kind of performance in this game. Obviously, it's a little bit tougher matchup. But like I kind of touched on, I'm not sure where Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is athletically right now. He got roasted by LeBron James in the last game, and Paul George obviously is not LeBron James, but he kind of profiles similarly. So I think we could see another, maybe not true ceiling like we saw against Portland, where he just absolutely ripped it up. But I mean, I think he can get you to like 45, 50 DraftKings points here again in this matchup pretty easily, and maybe with a ceiling for a little bit more. So I think he's a cash game play. On DraftKings, I think I would rather just pay the 200 extra to get to Blake Griffin in this spot. But I mean, I can see playing them both. I think they're both really strong plays. But if I'm picking one of them, I'm definitely going Blake Griffin. But at the worst, I think he's a really nice stack with either Kemba, Batum, or like a Batum and Marvin, or just Marvin. If you want to bring him back on the other side, and he trends toward his ceiling, so I really like him here. we've targeted Charlotte with point guards in the past. I'm not interested in Jeff Teague here. I mean, if you really want to do it, I could see it in a tournament. I don't think he's cash game play worthy. He saw a 16.4% usage rate in the last game. He was the biggest hit from Paul George's increased usage, and I think we could see Paul George, like I said, post a similar usage rate here. So I'm not really interested in Jeff Teague. I think Miles Turner is kind of interesting. It's not like Charlotte's really, really good at the rim or anything. Miles has seen a little bit of increased usage here. It was 23.1 in the last game. He's pretty cheap on DraftKings, only 5.7K. I'm always worried about him not rebounding, but he puts up defensive statistics. He's a good offensive player, and if he manages to get 10 rebounds in this game, I think he's really, really going to pay it off. But I don't know that he's a lock for 10 rebounds in this game. So I think he's a legitimate cash play just because he's so cheap. I think he's a nice kind of leverage play off of Nikola Jokic if you don't like Jokic as much in a tournament in the same spot. I think he carries a nice ceiling in this matchup. So I think he's like 30 to maybe 50 point range of outcomes here. Probably expecting him to come in the low to mid range there, but even if he gives you like 35 DraftKings points, that's going to pay it off over there. So I could see him as a cash indoor tournament play. He's definitely my second favorite play from the Indiana Pacers. Monta Ellis is out. I don't know how much that really does in this matchup. He hasn't been taking any shots. He hasn't been seeing a lot of minutes. It's not going to change my cap too much from what Indiana's going to do. If anything, I think it's giving a couple extra shot attempts to the main guys like Paul George, Teague, Miles Turner, and maybe a little bit extra to CJ Miles or Rodney Stuckey. Thad Young had a monster blow-up game in the last game. His usage rate didn't trend up at all, though. It was only 18, but he played a ton of minutes and saw just the softest matchup possible against Portland. I don't think this matchup is as attractive. We have targeted Charlotte with fours with some success, so I still think he's a reasonable tournament play, but I don't want to do it in cash games. I think he is more likely to score you 20 DraftKings points in this matchup than he is 50 again. So I'm not going to play him in cash games. If you really wanted to play him in tournaments, I certainly understand that, but I think that Paul George and Miles Turner are better targets in this game from the Indiana side of the ball. I could see, like I said, Rodney Stuckey and CJ Miles. I'm not going to do either of them in cash games, but I think they're low-owned, cheap upside guys in a tournament. Maybe they'd get it going offensively and kind of take over all of Monta Ellis's shot attempts and minutes. So I definitely think they're in play, especially in a game stack. So Paul George, Miles Turner, I think are legitimate cash game plays and tournament. And I really like stacking this game up because I think it's going to be pretty close. I don't know if they don't have a ton of points scored, but I think the main guys could have their minutes trend up a little bit because the game should stay relatively close. So Kemba, Batum, and Marvin Williams from the Charlotte side, Paul George and Miles Turner, and then Thad, Stuckey, and CJ Miles on the Indiana side of the ball. Next game to take a look at is the Washington Wizards, 1-point road favorites at Miami Heat. Totals 207. I'm pretty into this game. Think it could go over the total. I can kind of see this game getting up and down a little bit. Washington is a little bit of a pace up matchup for Miami. They're playing with 3 extra possessions per 48 minutes. John Wall is obviously the play from the Washington side of the ball. The problem I'm having with John Wall right now is just that there's so many other point guards that I want to play. I love John. I think he is a safe bet for like 45 DraftKings points here at least, which makes him a really good play. But there's just so many point guards that I want to play other than him. I probably won't do it. In cash games, I can see playing him in tournaments for sure. But I mean, I'd rather play Lowry. I'd rather get up to DeRozan or Harden. There's just other ways I want to go here, but always a really strong play. Saw a 31% usage rate in the last game. don't expect to see anything different. I think he's got a basement of like 25 and a ceiling of like 32, 33 in the usage department. Brad Beal's usage was only 22.6 in the last game. Could definitely see that trend back up here. He's usually closer to 30. So I definitely think he was kind of the lower end of his range of outcomes in the last game. I think he's definitely a tournament play. I'll go elsewhere in cash games, but I think he could, he can always give you like a 50-point ceiling in any matchup. So he's definitely a tournament play. Markieff Morris is a guy I'm kind of interested in. Only 5.4K on Draftkings. I really like him to play like mid-30s minutes in this matchup. I think he's going to have to be on the floor, and I kind of like his individual matchup for sure. He got hurt the last time these teams matched up, but he had a little bit of offensive success. He was 3 for 4 in only 9 minutes, but then he rolled an ankle. I think he's an interesting pivot off of Marcin Gortat. Marcin Gortat had a really strong game in the last game, but he had to play a bunch of extra minutes, saw a major tick up in rebounds. And I think anybody that's looking at game logs is going to look at the fact that Marcin Gortat scored 47 fantasy points the last time these two teams matched up, and is probably going to think he's a really strong play. I'm not as into Gortat right now. I've mentioned before, I think he is a threat to lose some minutes to Markieff at the 5. I think Markieff is just as good of a matchup individually as Gortat is with Hassan Whiteside, and maybe a little bit better. I think Markieff's actually a better post defender than Gortat is, and a little bit better of a rim protector. So I could see Gortat losing some minutes to Kelly Oubre. They've done that before down the stretch where Oubre slots in at the 3, pushes Otto Porter down to the 4, and then Markieff can play the 5 there. I think that's a legitimate play. I'm not playing Marcin Gortat in cash games for sure. There's a lot of other centers in that range that I like better. I could see playing him in a tournament, but I'm going to go elsewhere and let hopefully some people chase that last game. I think Markieff is a very interesting pivot off of him. I don't think he's going to be as owned, and I think he could trend upwards a little bit in minutes and usage. So, and I could even see playing Markieff in a cash game. I don't have him. I think there's probably better plays cheaper, and there are guys to pay up for obviously on the slate, but I definitely think he's at least a strong tournament play. I've been using him in some tournament lineups. I don't think many people are going to play him, and I think he can give you like a 40-point ceiling here. So a guy that could definitely outperform salary expectations. And a guy I just mentioned that I want to touch on again is Kelly Oubre. Unfortunately, in my last video cast that I did where the Wizards and Bucks played, my internet totally kicked out when I was doing this game, and I said that Oubre and Brogdon were both legitimate cash plays in that game, and then I played Brogdon instead of Oubre. And that just was horrible because Kelly Oubre is like one of my favorite players in the league, maybe my favorite player in the league right now. I've gone on and on about him a lot, but I mean, this kid is incredibly talented. He's got a 7'4" wingspan. He's like 6'7". He can shoot the 3. He can attack the rim, get to the line. He's shooting really well on his free throws right now. His minutes are trending way up because he can play anywhere. He can play the 2. He can play the 3. I mean, you can play him at the 4 in the right matchup. He's a great individual defender. They put him on Giannis at the end of the game in the last game. They're legitimately using him as a defensive stopper at the end of the game. They put him on Bledsoe in the Phoenix game. Like whatever guy is getting it going, he gets the assignment, and he's doing a really good job because I mean he's just, when you combine the lateral agility with his length, he's really, really tough from an individual matchup standpoint. And that is what is keeping him on the court right now. So I think you got to project him to see at least 25 minutes in this game. I think he could get up closer to 28 or 30. We saw him 29 minutes in the last game, and he's getting more involved offensively. Posted a 17.6% usage rate. I think that might have been why Beal took a little bit of the hit there because he was kind of playing some extra minutes at the 2. Beal's minutes trended down a little bit, and his usage was a little bit down. So I really like Oubre again in this spot. He's one of the main guys that I'm targeting at 3.4K, shooting guard and small forward eligible to get these really high-priced guys in. I mean, he only has to give you 20 Draftkings points. I feel good about him getting there in this matchup. A little bit deterred by the fact that he might match up individually with Josh Richardson, who I also have a lot of respect for on the other side of the ball. But I'm really comfortable on betting on Kelly Oubre's combination of the fact that his minutes are trending up, his usage is trending up a little bit. I think he's a very talented individual player. And the price point at 3.4K on DraftKings is just really helpful on this slate where we need some value. So I think he's giving you like a 20 to 40 DraftKings point range. So I think he's definitely gonna make you happy if you roster him. And he just makes a lot of sense to me. I'm playing him. Part of the reason I'm playing him is because I'm so frustrated by the fact that I missed out on that 39 fantasy point game in the last game where I was really close to playing him, and I have to get a piece of that this time. But even from an objective standpoint, I think he's a really good play. So definitely a guy that I think is cash indoor tournament viable. So from the Wizards side of the ball, he's probably my favorite play points per dollar. I would like Wall and Markieff next in line, and then Beal would be the next guy. I'm not really looking at Otto just because his price point and his usage rate is way down. Only saw a 12 usage rate in the last game. Really good player, going to play a lot of minutes, but it's tough to peg him on any given night. Like I said, I'm not interested in Gortat either. Usage down, minutes could trend down, could get in foul trouble easily against Hassan. So I'm just not going to play either of those two guys. It's going to be Oubre, Wall, Markieff, or Bradley Beal from me from Washington side of the ball. Bringing it back on the other side, I think Hassan Whiteside and Goran Dragic are both really strong plays in this matchup. Both posted 31% usage rates in the last matchup. They're really struggling right now for bodies, and we really like to target Washington with one, point guards that can shoot, which Dragic is, and then two, big guys who dominate the rim, who Hassan Whiteside definitely fills that would fill that description. So Hassan Whiteside at only 8.4K on DraftKings, I think is like a lock for cash games. And one of the reasons I'm okay with not playing Boogie Cousins is because I can just play Hassan Whiteside and I think maybe get a replaceable game points per dollar from him. Hassan Whiteside, the last time these teams matched up, had 18 rebounds, and he didn't have a single rebound in the first quarter. So he had 18 rebounds over the final three quarters. If he would actually rebound at that same rate, I mean, he's going to have 24 rebounds and probably 24 points. So 24 and 24 is going to get it done. He can block a bunch of shots. As long as he stays out of foul trouble and doesn't get hurt, I don't see him giving you anything less than like 50 DraftKings points in this matchup. That's pretty lofty expectation, but the way that his minutes and shots in the matchup are trending, I just don't see it happening. I think he's a really, really strong play. I have him in both of my cash game lineups. A guy I want to have in this matchup for sure. Same thing with Goran Dragic. I don't have him right now just because there's a lot of point guards that I want to play, but if you want to play him in cash, I think it's a legitimate play. I think he's going to see 36 plus minutes. I think he should see reasonable efficiency, and I think he's going to see usage up at least 30. So I think you're looking at like 33 to 35 points at the least, and I think you're looking at probably like a 50-ish point ceiling. And I would probably expect him to come in towards the higher range of his outcome. So I think like 45 to 46 DraftKings points is certainly a reasonable expectation for him in this spot. And if he scores 45 DraftKings points, you're going to be really happy with rostering him. So I have no problem with playing him in cash. I don't have him right now, but I think it's a strong play. I think Hassan and Dragic are a good tournament stack, and then you can bring it back on the other side with Wall, Beal, Markieff, Oubre. Any combination of those guys, I think they're all really strong plays. Josh Richardson, just touched on him. I don't think he's going to have enough usage to be a legitimate play at 4.8K on draft. He's a guy that I like just from an individual talent standpoint, but I'm not going to do it here. A bunch of their guys are questionable, like James Johnson and Babbitt and all those guys, so watch out for them. But even if they play, I don't think they're going to affect the usage enough where it'll bring me off of Hassan or Dragic. The only guy that would probably do that would be like Dion Waiters or something like that. So, and I'm pretty sure he's 100% out of this game. So I think they're both really strong plays. Yeah, Dion's not going to play. So definitely Hassan first, and then Dragic second from Miami. I think they're both cash indoor tournament plays, and then bring it back on the other side. I think Oubre is actually the best point per dollar play. And then I really like Wall, Markieff, and Beal as well. I just don't have them at the moment. Last game on the slate is one that I actually think is pretty juicy. We've got the Denver Nuggets on the road, 2-point favorites against the Dallas Mavericks. I think the wrong team is favored here. I think Dallas is going to win this game. I think they're a better team than the Nuggets are. Total's 202. I really like Dallas's guys in this matchup, and Dallas is usually a team that I just full fade. I don't even think about playing their guys, but we see a really concentrated usage tree right now with Dallas. In the last game, Wes Matthews put up a 36% usage rate, and I think some of that was the fact that they were playing the Rockets. So Darren had the individual matchup with Patrick Beverley, which kind of funneled a lot of his usage away towards Wes. He was about 4% lower than he normally is, although Wes was 12% higher than he normally is. So I think Wes Matthews is a pretty good play in the spot. I think he's a good bet to come in with a usage rate of anywhere from like 25 to 30. He's only 5.6K on DraftKings. I'm a little bit scared of the floor because he's mainly a shooter, but he's seeing incredible volume. He's hit an average of 5 3-pointers in his last 5 games. He's playing minutes in the mid-30s every night, seeing a ton of shots, and I think he's going to see efficiency here because he's going up against Denver. Denver's been one of the worst teams defensively here recently, 106.6 defensive rating on the year. Definitely a team to target, so I really like Wes Matthews. I have him in my cash games right now. I think he's a really strong play. I really like Harrison Barnes, all the same reasons. He's got a consistent usage rate right around 27. I think 27 to 30 is a reasonable expectation in this matchup. Like the individual matchup, just fine with all of the guys from Denver side. I'm not too worried about like Wilson Chandler, Gallinari, Kenneth Faried, Darrell Arthur, all the guys that Denver gives court time to. I'm not worried about that at all. He's got a really high usage rate. His price is only 6.1K on DraftKings. They haven't adjusted their prices at all to reflect that Denver is a really strong matchup. So I think you're getting a discount on these guys. I think they're giving you really strong floors and good ceiling combos, and I definitely expect them to come in towards the upper range of their outcomes in this matchup with Denver. So really like Harrison Barnes. I think it's going to give you at least like 36 minutes here, maybe up to like 38 or 40. A guy I definitely want to have on my cash game rosters. And again, one of the guys that's I'm comfortable enough playing him that I guess I can miss out on Paul George. I think I'm going to play him over Paul George on DraftKings, but I still think Paul George is a really, really strong play. But so yeah, I really think Harrison Barnes is strong target in cash games and/or tournaments. And then Darren Williams, again, targeting point guards against Dallas is just like the most profitable thing ever. Darren's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. I think he's going to have a ton of assists in this matchup just because of the fact that he's going to handle the ball a lot, and then they should see increased offensive efficiency, so that should tick his assists up. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get to double-digit assists here. I think he could still score 15 to 20 real points, give you a couple of boards. Probably not going to play any defense, but I think he's a really strong target at 5.7K on DraftKings. I think all three of those guys are playable in cash when you consider the fact that they're all probably going to play at least like 33 to 35 minutes with a little bit of upside for more. They're all going to see a combined usage of probably close to maybe like an 80% usage rate here, because I mean nobody else is taking shots for this team. It's those three guys, and they're all really cheap, and this is an amazing matchup. So all three of those guys really strong plays in cash and/or tournaments. I'm not going to play any of the big guys. I just don't want to do it. I don't need to play Seth Curry. I think Dorian Finney-Smith is somebody we actually need to consider here, especially for the fact that he's only 3.1K on DraftKings. Kind of touched on how we need some value to fit in the studs in this slate. His minutes and usage are trending up. I kind of like him. I haven't seen him a whole lot, but when I've seen him, I've been pretty impressed with him. Pretty good athlete, a lot of length. He's hitting 3-pointers. He's 5 of his last 11 from 3. I think he's a guy you can play at 3.1K in a cash game if you really want to pay up for all these studs, because the same kind of stuff applies for him. I think he's a lock for at least 30 minutes here. Love the matchup, and then love the price point. So I think he's a legitimate target. I think he's a guy that you can kind of expect to give you at least 20 points here with maybe a ceiling of like 25 DraftKings points, and he only needs you 18 to get there. So I think it's a really like if you just want to go superstars and scrubs, I think you could start your games with James Harden at point guard, then go Oubre and Finney-Smith at shooting guard, small forward, and feel pretty good about getting at least 40 points combined out of those guys, and then come back with DeMarcus Cousins, and then you have the two probably highest ceilings, and then two guys that I feel really comfortable with their floors at cheap price points, and then just kind of fill it out from there. So I think that's a legitimate legitimate build in cash games. If you're not comfortable with that, I think it's a strong tournament build. So I actually really like that game, especially on the Dallas side because we know where the minutes and shots are going to be, and we love the matchup. Denver side of the ball is not as attractive for me. Too hard to peg minutes and usage on any given night. Dallas plays at a really, really slow pace. I think Nikola Jokic is still in play. His price is coming up a little bit. Only 5.8K on DraftKings though. I think he's a lock for like 24 minutes plus. We know where the offensive involvement is. He's scored at least value 5 straight games. I don't see any reason for that to stop here. Really like the individual matchup. He's going to see Dwight Powell or Salam Ajri or somebody like that. I'm not worried about that at all. I think that's actually a tick up for him. So he's the only guy that I'm interested in on Denver side of the ball. Wilson Chandler is supposed to play in this game. It's way too difficult to peg. I mean, you could use any of their guys, I guess, in tournaments because they could give you a ceiling game at any given time. But I'm not going to play them. I'm just playing Jokic from the Denver side of the ball and then moving on. And I think he's an awesome stack with Wes and or Harrison Barnes and or Darren Williams. I think all three of those guys are really, really good tournament plays. And then bringing it back with Jokic makes a lot of sense. I mean, we saw in the last game with Denver, kind of profiled very similarly where we had Denver going up against Orlando. Orlando's a very bad offensive team, but they had a ton of offensive success, and then they had a shortened usage streak because Vucevic didn't play in that game. So then we saw ceiling games from Fournier, and Jeff Green was even good, and Biyombo and Ibaka all gave you really fantasy usable games. So I think we could see the same kind of thing here with the Dallas Mavericks, where all of their guys are super usable with respect to their price points here. So I really like them. And there was like 130 points scored in that, or 230 points scored in that game, where typically you wouldn't expect it to be that high. The total here is only 202, and like I said, I think there's a strong chance that this total goes over, especially if Denver is able to come out and put a little bit of pressure on Dallas to start the game. So I'm actually pretty interested in this game. I think there's some plays. So that will cover the slate for tonight. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and best of luck with all of your games tonight. Hope you guys get some buckets.